It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Eric Bauman. He is the chair of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, vice chair of the state party. Later on in this interview, we're going to be inviting some fellows from the party to join us. But first, I want to speak with you, Mr. Bauman, about the June primary. Oh, my Lord. The controller's race was a barn burner like we have never, ever seen. In the end, Betty Yee was triumphant over John Perez. The margin was
481 votes.
481 votes.
1/100th of 1%.
1/100th of 1%. Before we talk about recounts, what does that say to you?
It says to me you had two very evenly matched candidates. It says that California, the majority of Californians clearly voted for a Democrat in that race, and so the next controller is going to be Betty Yee.
One could argue.
And hopefully, from my point of view.
Right.
But it also says that every vote really counts. And there's nothing more important. We always say that mantra. Your vote counts. People say my vote doesn't count. 481 votes out of millions.
Literally millions.
So 481 little votes.
I know that you worked for the speaker. He's now Speaker Emeritus. I think it's fair to say that many folks believed he was the front runner. He wound up coming out on the other side. What does this say to you generally about elections and the fact that, in a statewide race, anything could happen?
Well, first of all, it is true that anything can happen. Remember who votes in primaries. The most committed voters to each party vote. When the top two primary, Proposition 14, passed, people thought, it's going to cause independents to flock to vote. Studies have shown it really hasn't changed who votes. And Betty Yee ran a terrific grassroots campaign all across the state.
She did.
Heavily organized from the Bay Area to Santa Barbara.
Everywhere.
And she showed up at every event.
The speaker was the speaker.
John was doing his job as the speaker,
and
it much harder to be everywhere when you're negotiating a budget.
Right. She's on the Board of Equalization, but there was a bit more flexibility, one could argue.
Yes, she had much more flexibility than trying to cajole the 80 members of the Assembly.
And so let's talk about the recount that did start, but ultimately concluded because it was clear that if the recount played itself out, it would have been decided in 2016.
Well,
I exaggerate a bit, but not much.
The problem is, unlike most states, we don't have an automatic recount. Where if the margin is less than 0.5%, there's an automatic recount. It's statewide.
This was 1/100th of a percent.
Correct. What is amazing is that a candidate who requests a recount has to pay for it, unless, of course, it changes the outcome of the election. You still have to front the money. And to count Los Angeles County alone completely is more than $1 million.
And the other odd element, I believe, is that the candidate requesting the recount can select where he or she wants the recount.
Right.
Which seems anti-democratic. I take nothing away from strategy, but it does, people looked at that and thought,
There was one misnomer about how it played in the press. Within a county, in order to change the results of that county, the entire county has to be counted, though you have a choice between a hand count and a machine count.
But you can pick which county to go first.
Correct.
Yeah.
You could pick 3 counties, pick up the 482 votes you needed, and stop and say, okay, I win. And then if the other side can come in and they can count some counties, and then you can go back and count some more counties.
And in a primary, impossible. I mean, if it was a general, arguably it could work.
So with all the talk about reform of our elections. Okay, the two most important reforms we need: campaign finance reform that is rational and reasonable, and reform of the recount system, so that a candidate really can have a recount who deserves one and not be stuck footing the bill.
So how does that look? I mean, I know there were rumblings in the legislature. The session's coming to a close, if not closed already. How does it look?
There's an assembly member from Northern California who I believe has introduced a bill specifically on the recount issue. And there are a number of other reforms that are likely to come out of this session. The one thing that clearly the voters of California are frustrated by is how money is moving in and out of these elections. Look, I spend a good portion of my life raising money for the party.
Yes, you do.
It is tough to do. But when you're an assembly member, a state senator, and you have to do that, everybody's automatically thinks you're suspect. Most legislators are really good people who got into this to do a good job. They shouldn't have to spend so much time raising money.
And candidly, I've said this recently, the notion that you would black out the entire legislative session from fundraising, that's 8-9 months. I mean,
right. Which, by the way, the disadvantage is if I'm an assembly member and you're running against me, you get to raise money all year and I don't.
Yeah, it's problematic, one could argue. But in an era of Citizens United, can the legislature put that imposition on itself?
Well, they can, and the Senate has put a version of it, a bill by Senator DeLeon.
Right.
But look, I think that we're going to have to find some rational reform. Right now, people from outside of campaigns are spending more money than people inside of campaigns. And if you're the candidate and somebody thinks they're helping you, and they say all the wrong things, they could blow your campaign up and say, it's happened before. So we need a little bit of reform there.
I want to thank you for joining us. Eric kindly has offered 3 of his young men to join us on the program. We'll get a sense of what these folks see is for the future of the Democratic Party. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Brad Pomerance. Yes, we are now joined by 3 young men who have been working for the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. I want to get their views on the party, the future. We are first joined by Nathaniel Bernhardt. He is a junior going to be at UC Davis from North Hollywood. You worked at the party this summer. What did you take away from your time there?
One thing I definitely took away from my time there is sort of being proactive, especially about relationship building, in that you don't want your first interaction with someone to be you asking them for a favor. You want to have developed a background, some sort of rapport with them before you go and ask them for something, which you inevitably will have to do at some point.
And what do you hope to do when you go back to UC Davis?
I think that's definitely a skill you can bring to any type of campus government, where if you are trying to get something passed through school senate, through a commission, you want to have gotten to know your senators, known your commission members before then, so you don't just say, hey, this is what I need you to do. By the way, my name's Nathaniel.
Now we have Brandon Carlos. Brandon will be a fellow with the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. He recently graduated from Cal State San Bernardino. Brandon, what made you decide to have your first job out of college be as a fellow for the party?
Well, I actually got involved with Eric personally, through family and stuff like that.
Right.
But he's just trying to help me, mentor me to be, involved politically in the. He's just trying to help me.
Which is great, and mentors are so important. I had one. My first job was with the Senator Alan Cranston campaign, which is God from the back in the 80s, and the campaign manager was my mentor. I still revere him today, Derry Schrago. I'm sure it's a familiar name to some of you. So what do you hope to learn over the next year or so?
Just develop as a person, develop, my skills, attributes.
Why the Democratic Party? Why not the Republican Party?
I just feel, I have more in common with the Democratic Party, religiously. And
I get it. Okay, let's go to Sean Kiernan. Sean, you are finishing your term as the fellow for the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. You are a graduate of Cal State Fresno.
Yes.
You are the political director of the California College Democrats from Santa Clarita. How's your year been?
My year has been amazing, Brad. I think being a fellow for the LACDP has been a wonderful opportunity for me, and I can say that I've learned more in the last 3 months of doing this than I have during any other time in my life.
Why?
What a fellow does for the LACDP and Eric is pretty much exactly what any staff member working for any politician will do. All the way from managing scheduling requests from many people for many different reasons, and working that into the calendar in a way that is efficient and professional.
How do you see the future of the Democratic Party in the state of California? Is it bright? Is it rocky?
Absolutely.
Be honest.
Look, California Democratic Party has obviously been very, very successful. And I think the future of it lies in mainly 2 things, or one thing, expanding the conversation and then discussion to include more people who have historically been excluded, namely younger people, immigrants, and ethnic minorities. And if we can do that well through grassroots organizing, and if we can utilize technology well, I think we'll be golden.
This is the future. My name is Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.